Sharing our stories makes us stronger and brings us closer together. So, here's to the strong women. May we know them. The podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lucas. I'm a coach, published author, and a speaker, but more so, I like to create spaces for the messy parts of our stories to be celebrated and supported because we are stronger together. Pull up a cozy spot and get ready to nod your head along with Jacqueline today as she shares her story around giving herself permission to change her mind. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May We Know Them podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lucas. I'm so excited to have you here today. We record all of these episodes live, and we do that because we like to do scary things. No, we do that because there's some really cool magic that happens in having an organic conversation. So sorry you missed the live if you're catching the recording here, and that doesn't mean this conversation is over. My ask of you today as you're listening is to have a pen and paper nearby, Post-its, something. If you hear something that our guest, Jacqueline, who I'll tell you about in a second, that Jacqueline says today as she shares her story, if you hear something that really resonates with you, write it down. If you hear something that kind of rubs you the wrong way or makes you question life or in your choices, hey, maybe you needed that today, write it down. There might be things said today that land for you today or 2 weeks from now. So trust that wherever you're at in the world, at whatever stage, wherever you're listening to this, whenever, that you're meant to hear it. So thanks for being here for this conversation. Jacqueline Nwankwo, our guest today. Oh my goodness, let me tell you about her. Her and I met, probably over 5 years ago, 5, 6, 7 something years ago. We got connected through doing some online stuff. Worked in an MLM together. Probably where we both first, I'm assuming, like got exposed to personal development and just like that whole journey of self-discovery. And I've been in her corner ever since, just watching what she's up to in the world and some really, really amazing things. Jacqueline brings a lot of heart to everything that she does. Like she'll share a little bit today, I'm sure, about motherhood. I'm sure a little bit about the work that she does, but really just how she shows up in the world. Like I trust what she says because of who she is and the energy she brings. And I trust that you're going to feel that through listening to her story today. So get cozy, sit with us, hang with us today. Jacqueline's going to be sharing about her breakthrough around giving herself permission to change her mind. The past 3+ years, like we've all been through a pandemic, there's been a lot of opportunities presented to us where we had some decisions to make. I'm sure a lot of us pivoted, changed our minds. Maybe we didn't want to. Maybe there was a lot of letting go. Maybe there was a lot of stepping into the unknown. So hi, like we see you, and we're going to talk about some things today that might have you nodding your head along. So Jacqueline, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. So, coming to this aha around, hey, I can change my mind. I know personally for me, like I left an education career after 8 years. Like it took, and I knew about 3-4 years in that like my time was up, and I still held on. So it's not something where you just realize it and then you're like, oh, yep, I'm gonna change career paths or I'm gonna let this go. So tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life up until this point. Set the stage for us.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's a long story, but I think it's important to know that my basically entire life growing up, I knew that I was going to be in front of people. I craved the spotlight. I craved connection. I craved this level of performance in my life. And so when I got to high school and I started realizing like, dang, I can really sing, it became very clear to me that like, okay, music is my career. Mm-hmm. And of course we make a lot of decisions when we're 14, right? That don't resonate when we're 24. But I went to college for opera performance, and I had in my mind that like this was my path. And I grew up in a small town where I was like better at music than a lot of the people. It was a big fish, small pond situation.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a smaller university where it was still a big fish, small pond situation. And I got into the world after graduation and realized that everyone was good. Like being good, it's not enough anymore because you're not the best when you get into the real meat of like your career, especially in performance and something as like high level and as intense as the classical music world, especially. So, I mean, I floundered. I think a lot of us do when we get out of college, hence the MLM girly journey. That's just one iteration of like trying to carve out something for myself in the world. And it took a lot of, oh gosh, how do I say this? Just like forcing. It took a lot of forcing that I didn't realize at the time was forcing, but I would, try to do half-heartedly do an audition season, knowing that I think it really wasn't what I wanted. And that would show up in the audition room with me. It would show up as having not practiced until the 11th hour. It would show up as waiting until the car ride to the audition to make sure I was memorized, when if I really had thought about it and really been truly passionate about what I was doing and not just about the light at the end of the goal, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I would have, I think, cared to really dig into it. But there was a misalignment the whole time that I couldn't see while I was in it. And so I went on that way for years, and I ultimately decided performance isn't for me. I don't want the hustle. I don't want the auditions. I don't want the travel. I don't want the constant rejection. Like that, it just sucks to hear no all the time.
Yeah.
And so there was a period of time where I was like, okay, well, I don't want to have quit music. I still want to do music, but I'm an academic. I love writing. I love learning. I love history. So after getting rejected from grad school for performance a couple times, I said, you know what? I'm going to be a musicologist. I'm just going to study and be in academia. And then I applied to school for musicology twice. And again, it was like this misalignment. I waited until the week of the application to get it done. I never studied outside of like when people would ask me about things and I could perform the musicologist role for them, and got rejected from grad school for musicology twice. At a certain point, I remember this is 2021. So we're after the pandemic. I've been just working in office management for music schools for a while. And I remember getting rejected while I got the email at work, and I started crying. I asked my boss if I could go home. I went home. I sat on my couch. I had icy hot on my back in my bathrobe because I was having like these neck spasms from the stress. And I was like just sobbing on my couch in the dark. And that was a moment where I think I really had to reckon with like, is this what I want? And for a while, like for a couple of weeks, I mourned it, I grieved. And then I came to that pivot point where I realized, like, looking back at all of these things that I perceived to be failures, were they, like I said, all along, just simply misalignments? And is like, I've been so desperate to just find some way to not quit music, because quitting music feels like quitting. Mm-hmm. And are people going to look at me like I quit, like I couldn't hack it?
Yeah.
But 2 weeks later, I started my business. And that was the moment where it was like, okay, I'm just going to try something drastically different. Mm-hmm. And if I do music, I do music, but I'm tired of putting the pressure on it and on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear like, as you're sharing this, you've got a smile on your face. If you're listening to just the podcast version, you can't see it, but you can probably hear it. Like, I hear so much grace for who you were then as you're sharing that. And the self-awareness of like you can see now in hindsight, it was misalignment. But at the time, I'm sure it was more of like, what the hell is wrong with me?
Oh,
Why can't I
absolutely.
figure this out? Why is it happening for everyone else? Why can't you, what, like all the stuff? Because otherwise, why would you keep pushing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, I blamed myself a lot, I think, in those years for not practicing enough. Like everyone else practice. Why can't I just practice?
Mm-hmm.
It comes with the job. I should want to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there must be something wrong with me for that. Or like, you know, and then there's like the blaming of other people or the blaming of the universe or the industry. It's like, I'm so good. Why does nobody want to cast me?
Yeah.
And it's in reality not quite that simple, because I showed up and I might be good, but I was unprepared.
Yeah.
I might be good, but my heart wasn't in it, and that showed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't like Jacqueline then, bless her. She was trying so hard, I think, to keep up appearances and to keep with something that she thought was her dream. And that, like, I gotta pat her on the back for tenacity, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
against all odds. But at a certain point, like, I think I matured enough to realize that forcing something might be a symptom of a larger issue, that like maybe this isn't actually your dream and there are other things out there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point, because it's a fine line with, like you mentioned, so like her tenacity, that's celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
That's celebrated. Like pushing through is celebrated. Grit is celebrated. But whenever it's something that's not in alignment, like there's actually a cost.
Yeah.
And I think many of us, and maybe like pandemic induced or just like where we are in the world right now, have come to question the path we're on or the decisions we've made. Have maybe looked in the mirror and really looked within, like, hey, like on paper, even if like they've landed the role, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have all these things that I've wanted for years, but I feel restless or I feel empty or like something, doesn't feel how I thought it would.
Yeah.
And likely immediately go to, what the hell's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I just be grateful? Like use gratitude as like a shaming tool, things like that. And yeah, like this is where procrastination, which is normally like seen as a bad thing, like procrastinating, like could actually be a clue of like use that as a window into, hey, maybe it's not meant for you.
Yeah. Maybe I don't enjoy this.
Yeah.
Maybe I
That's
don't want
okay.
it.
Like celebrate that you spent all this time and energy and figuring out what you don't want.
Yeah.
That's clear. Great. We have clarity. Awesome.
Absolutely. And I mean, that can happen when you have to decide what you want when you're 17, right? Like,
yeah,
we change so much.
we change so much at 17, at 27, like
Yep.
all through life, depending like what's going on in our world, what's going on in the world, like what's going on in the world of those we love. There's pivots all over the place. So talk to us a little bit about, so you had this, you grieved what was, and you decided to venture out on your own path and you started your own business. So talk to me a little bit about, like, as somebody else who has let go of an old identity and started their own business. I know the stuff I've been through over here. I'd love to tell people that it's like, once you get aligned or like make that decision, that like, oh, things just happen and it's beautiful. And sometimes they do, like it's a really validating, experience. Like sometimes things just click, but there's also a lot of, it's not always that pretty. It's usually messy. So talk to us a little bit about, once you've had this aha, like the path from there and what happened for you.
Absolutely. My aha moment came a little bit in like a frenzy. It's like the best way I can describe it. Of course, I'm at kind of a low point, so I'm looking for anything.
Yeah.
And I've been through the grief. I've kind of moved through the mourning of this particular part of my dream, right? And I know that there's something else. Ultimately, I came to a moment where not only did I realize that music wasn't really my dream anymore, like it was, but also a moment in my marriage where we're in a 3 to 5 year plan to have kids after we get married. We're coming up on year 3 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sitting there thinking, okay, we need to start considering what it looks like to start a family, to enter this new part of our lives. And I'm looking at my reality of working 40 to 50 hours a week outside of my home and thinking, this is not how I want to start my family. Like, I want to be there for the milestones. I want to see my baby's first steps. I don't want to have to default to daycare, to, other people being with my kids all the time. Like, and that's great, but I didn't want that to be my only choice.
Yes.
And so that sent me down the rabbit hole of online business and what that could look like. And honestly, it sounds so funny and silly when I look back on it, but it was a universe thing. I was just scrolling on TikTok one day, honest to God. And I saw this young woman in her early 20s who was just talking about how she became a virtual assistant. And I was like, wow, cool. And she was describing what it was like. And I went down a rabbit hole, all of her content, all related content. My husband was in a show at the time. He was still in grad school, and he was in rehearsals a lot in the evenings. And so I would come home from work and I would just tunnel into this, I want to know more about this. I want to learn more about this business. And he came home one day and he will describe it to people as almost like a frenzy state. I was like, I'm going to be a virtual assistant. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start this business and I'm going to get these clients. And I made a portfolio and I put together this ramshackle little website in 2 days. And 2 weeks later, I had my first client. And it almost felt like blacking out and then waking up and having a business. I don't know how else to describe it. So having my first client in the 2 weeks after starting the business, it definitely felt like you were saying, it felt like sunshine, rainbows, green light from the universe. You keep going.
Mm-hmm. You got the ladder up against the right wall this time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it was that for about 4 months. I mean, it took off. I got client after client. I was feeling hot.
Mm-hmm.
My job, thankfully, I talked to my boss, he kind of allowed me to scale back as I scaled up in my own business, which worked out really nicely. I'm really grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And within 4 months, I had quit my job and I was full-time in my business, which was incredible. Just the most amazing feeling. And then, now I run a business. And there are so many new things that I've never experienced before. That was the summer of 2021. Mm-hmm. By the summer of 2022, I'm hitting 5-figure months. I have a small team, and now I'm trying to figure out how to delegate. And I am possibly failing in a lot of ways in delegating because I am hedging so far into burnout territory at that point. And so there, like you said, it can be green lights. It can be neon sign from the universe that you're doing the right thing, and you're still going to come up against these things that feel sticky, things that might make you want to quit. For me, it was really a reckoning in learning how to trust other people, learning how to let go of some things. which brings me honestly now to the next big pivot, because we're not done. Like there's always something new and available, and there's always new needs that come up in your life. I am a new mother. I'm 4 months postpartum with my son, and my maternity leave was a huge exercise in pivoting, letting go of control. And now, as I see the industry shift, just as my life has shifted and my goals and time available to me has shifted, I'm pivoting again, because it, like, I'm looking again at my life and saying, is what I'm doing now viable? Is what I'm doing now aligned? And I'm finding mismatches again, but this time I think I'm braver because I've done it before.
Yeah.
Like I know I can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what's cool about it is, like, for me, what I'm hearing is, that question of actually like sitting down and taking an audit of where you're at in your life and your business. Like here's where I'm spending my time. Here's what's coming in. Here's what's going out, both like money and energy and like all of it, like navigating all that currency and taking stock and knowing that we are humans and we evolve. Like perhaps there's just a new way of being around life where maybe we actually intentionally take that audit at least once a year, maybe every 6 months, like depending on how things are going, versus picking like who you want to be in the world at 17 and committing to that for the next 40 years.
Oh gosh, absolutely.
Like it's just like there's a lot of like the word that comes to mind, like clenching, like holding on for dear life, like forcing. There's a lot of forcing in that. And to be willing to take a look, to be willing to consider a pivot. You mentioned about like delegating and trusting people. That also requires a lot of trust in yourself. Like, hey, I'm going to be able to figure this out. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do or how to do this or who to call, but I'll figure it out.
Absolutely. I think that pivoting and being okay with letting go of control, whether that's quitting, whether that's just trusting others, it's a muscle. Like you have to, I think, practice trusting yourself. And
Yes.
also you have to like practice the mindset of knowing that you can figure it out, like knowing that there is something else available. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, because you've begun to train your brain and train yourself to know that like, I will figure this out. That's why I think the first pivot's the hardest one, because you don't know what's on the other side of it.
Yeah, that concept of practicing is so important. Like a lot of times, because of course, if it's a big pivot, there's going to be a ton of fear telling you all the reasons why not, right? So yeah, maybe practice in a smaller, a smaller arena. One of my favorite places to practice just trusting myself or making a decision, like, is around dinner. Like if anybody else were to ask me what I want for dinner, I have a default of, well, I'm easy, like whatever you want, like just pick. And like how cool to be given that option and just choose something.
I need to take that on.
For me.
Yeah,
That's so uncomfortable for me. Like even making my son dinner, like, and of course, like he's like top of mind. I'm like, all right, what is he having? And I'll just have some leftover of his mac and cheese. But like to take the time to ask myself, like, what do I want? Just to practice building that muscle of saying, what do I want? I have the answer. It doesn't always have to default to, I don't know, or,
what makes other people comfortable.
What makes other people comfortable.
Yeah.
What's easy. Like, yeah. So yeah, practicing in other containers. It's huge.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like this was like a strange, I think last ditch to like find meaning in what I was doing before I started my business and became an entrepreneur. But I remember somewhere in that 2 weeks of like, okay, I'm not going to grad school. What now? I decided I wanted a new position at my job. And so I wrote up a proposal for a position that didn't exist yet. And I took it to my boss's office and I was like, okay, so I'm not going to grad school, which means I'll stay, but this is the job I want. And it's like a 3-page proposal.
Yeah.
And that was like, honestly, I will attribute a lot of my success to delusion, honestly, like delusional confidence that like I can just figure things out and that things work out for me. And sometimes they don't, but it's okay because you have to try. And that was like my first it seems like a high stakes situation because the audacity to walk into your boss's office and ask for a job that doesn't exist. But to me, it felt like a safer playground to practice a big pivot, to practice advocating for myself, to practice just asking for what I wanted. And it didn't obviously work out.
Yeah.
But thankfully my boss was very nice about it. And it didn't work out for a reason. And that was kind of like all right, well, that's not an option anymore. So I got to hightail it out of here and do something else.
Well, since we're kind of in this vein right now in this conversation, for anybody listening who might be feeling or questioning, like maybe there's a change that they need to make in their life, whether it's career, whether it's relationship, whether it's health, like who knows what, like that they're sensing that there may be a pivot on the horizon. Any advice for people, like whether it's, steps to take or things to tell themselves, or even just like signs that maybe, hey, that's coming, like I don't know if it's like what their body's telling them or just noticing. Anything you can shed light on here?
Wow. I think there are so many things, at least in my experience, but you mentioned like body sensations. Like I think one of the biggest signs for me in the rejection of my performance career was, like I said, like that procrastination. That's a big red flag. If you find yourself going through the motions of whatever it is that you're currently doing and realizing that you're not present in them, your body feels off. You feel that anxiety in your chest, whether it's like mental, physical, just sense of restlessness. I think that was present through my performance career before I left it. And it was also present just in the work I did otherwise, before I became an entrepreneur. And if I can give any advice, I think it's to look around in your life and look at the choices you've made so far, maybe the choices that have brought you to where you currently are, in the place where you're not feeling happy and fulfilled, and look for evidence that you have done maybe risky things successfully. Like look for evidence in your life that you have taken bold steps toward things, whether they've worked out or not. Ideally, like really look at the ones that have worked out.
Yeah.
And allow yourself, through whatever means necessary, whether it's just kind of meditating on it, whether it's talking to other people in your life and getting affirmation from them, allow yourself for 1 minute to believe that you could just do it again. It's like I said before, I accredit a lot of my success so far in my life to this delusional sense of confidence that I deserve to have happiness and success, that I can figure things out. And that's not so easy for some people, like I was affirmed a lot as a child. I know a lot of people that weren't. So like there's a lot of nurture that goes into the ways that we see ourselves, but try it on, maybe, even if it's not you, if it doesn't feel natural to you to just simply believe in yourself for no reason. Consider trying it on like a costume for a second and think, what would somebody who is delusionally confident in themselves do in this moment?
Yeah.
And see if that helps you start flexing that muscle. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like you mentioned about looking for evidence, we've got such an automatic muscle memory around looking for evidence, but not in the positive.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's actually like the decision to turn the volume down on that and choose to see evidence in the positive light, which is not, I mean, like for me, like I was trained or raised or just took, the lessons I took from the world was that the way to get me into action was to like hate myself or talk bad to myself And then the motivator is to do anything in my power to not be that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's which doesn't work, because then the fuel, you're always keeping the thing you don't want like beside you.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work that way. So yeah, finding evidence that that you're awesome, that you can
Yeah.
take risks, that you can land on your feet, even if things didn't work out, that you picked yourself back up. That's not a strong muscle for a lot of people. It's not the first thing we tend to look at. So yeah, finding that. And if you can't, or if you're having a hard time, call your people. They'll reflect that to you.
Our community sees us so differently than we see ourselves,
Yeah.
like the people that we love. And I can think of so many times where I've doubted myself, and someone in my life, my parents, my friends, like mentors, have looked at me and thought like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you're the smartest person I know, or like you're industrious, or like you're whatever. And it's just reflections to me of things that don't immediately feel true within me, but that are true in the way that I move in the world. And I think we all have that.
Yeah.
If we simply ask.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to be open to hearing it and
Yeah.
believing it's true. Again, even if you're just trying it on like a character, to get through the next brave step.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. So in light of, sharing about like turning to your people, the name of the podcast is May We Know Them. We're talking about the strong women in the world, sharing their stories for inspiration. So many of us go through things and we keep ourselves isolated. There's the picture perfect world out there, and then we've got our crap, and really we all have crap. It's just not always isolated. And so, just share with us if there's anybody who has been just like a lighthouse in your corner that you've looked to in this journey to keep you going. You should know about.
Yeah. I mean, the first person that comes to mind is definitely my mom, who she'll probably listen to this podcast later. And I mean, don't cry, Mom, if you do. But we have had like a lot of mother and daughters do, and I am the oldest, so it's escalated. We've had a tumultuous relationship, I think, as I came of age and started making my way in the world. And there's like a lot of icky, sticky separation things that come with that. And as I've gotten older and we've both changed, we've come to find this really like beautiful friendship and kinship that we have now that I really value. And when I look back on my childhood, like it wasn't easy by any means. Like there was a lot of struggle for everyone in my family.
Yeah.
But I credit a lot of like my tenacity and my confidence to the fact that like as a child, regardless of what was going on, I was always very affirmed. Like my parents did always like make an effort to tell me that I was valued, that I was smart, that I was capable. And that has done a lot for me, I think, in my life to really, from an early age, allow me to like flex that muscle. And in the friendship that I have with my mom now, there's a lot of understanding, I think. Like before we started recording, Meghan, we were talking about this cycle breaking idea that a lot of people in our generation are embracing, this idea that we don't have to sit in where we are. We don't have to suffer abuse. We don't have to be complacent or unhappy. Like we can simply pivot. And there's so much more available now to us than was ever available to our parents. And there's a lot of opportunity in that, I think, within our own families to, in whatever way we can, take our families to task a little bit about breaking generational curses that hurt all of us. And that has been a huge part, I think, of my healing relationship with my mom, is like the two of us sometimes butting heads and taking to task on these generational things that no one has really known to look at until
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it's healed so much of our relationship. It's healed a lot for me. It's healed a lot for her. So she is definitely the first one I think of. The other big, I think, motivator for me in terms of a community of women is the coaches that I work with, like you being one of them. My entire business is propped up by communities of incredible coaches in a lot of different spheres who I get to serve. And I'm so thrilled because I think my purpose in this scope of online business, no matter what I'm offering, is to elevate women, and especially elevate women coaches who are getting in the weeds with people to improve their lives too. And so that the community of people I work with, clients, colleagues, just women who are really making bold strokes and taking bold steps and pivoting and getting what they need and helping other people do the same it's what gets me going every single day. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it
no,
for me.
I hear you. Like I'm a coffee drinker, and sometimes, the energy of the people I surround myself with is my coffee. Like
Yeah.
there's so much, like how you could like I get antsy, like just like with excitement. It's such a cool place to be, to acknowledge that too, because um I don't know if you experience this, but doing something that lights me up, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And I used to think that that only happened when I did things that, like, from a place of burnout and stress, and like things that you're passionate about doing tire you too. But it's like such a validating tire. Like, oh, it was so awesome what happened today, or that conversation I had, or what this person is doing makes me want to learn how to do cartwheels, and like this is how I want to do life. And yeah, I really feel you in that. And that's like I've referred you to people because your energy, like you bring that heart-centered, like, oh, we're doing like you connect in that way. Your energy speaks to people I know because of how you show up. And like I mentioned at the top of us recording here, like I trust you and whatever you create because of the energy that you bring as a human being, first and foremost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a girl's girl. I'll say that to anybody. I'm a freaking girl's girl. Like hanging out with other women and connecting in in that way is just, it's just like what I live for. And so when we're like, I mean, I'm a service provider, I'm not a coach. But getting to be in spheres.
Yeah.
With people like you, with people like a lot of my other clients, some of which you have referred me to, like these very people we're talking about. It's just, it's like getting in the goo with them and like, oh my God, I have this crazy idea. Like, girly, let's do it. Like
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
I'm so into like helping bring those things to life because it just lights me up, and I might be exhausted at the end of all of it because there's so much labor that goes into making these things happen. But to be able to partner with people and offer my strengths wherever their zone of genius ends or just their like energy ends, when we work together, like we get so much further.
Yeah.
And that I'm satisfied at the end of the day, regardless of how long it took.
Well, it would be a shame for us to get to this point and talk about this energy and not share like some of the actual details about what you do and provide for people. Like you mentioned, started your business, 2 weeks later, a client, like all the thing going full time. And there's pivots all along the way. And I know you've just actually experienced a pivot in your business and like the service you provide. So please share with us some details, because I know like people listening to this are going to be curious.
Yeah.
So tell us the things that we need to know.
I mentioned that I started my business as a virtual assistant, I think somewhere along the line here.
Yeah.
And part of what comes with that for a lot of people is like niching as you go. And one thing I started to realize, honestly, when I got pregnant was like, okay, this is amazing. I have gotten so far up until this point, and now I'm looking ahead to a world where this is unsustainable just because of the way my life is going to change. Now I still have some virtual assistant clients that work with other people, my team, my amazing team members within my company. But I do digital marketing. That's what I love. It lights me up creatively. And I think it's such a necessary, it's what I partner with people. Even when I was billing myself as a VA, like that was 99% of the time. What I was partnering with people on was growing their social media, managing their leads, getting them new leads, developing websites, like these things that require you, like you're required to really put yourself out there in order to grow your business. And so much of it is draining, I think, for coaches who just really want to show up and coach. And also so much of it is just outside your zone of genius and something that you're ideally prepared to just get support with. So that's what I do now. It's such a bigger, fulfilling, creative work for me. And a lot of the people that I'm partnering with now in this new way, we're able to really create robust and luxurious feeling marketing that speaks to them, to their audiences and their brands in a higher level way than I ever could have before working on top of burnout. So this is that new pivot, and it feels really good. And it feels like something, when I decided to do it, that was so attainable. I was like, yeah, this is just what I'm going to do now. I'm not afraid to blow up my whole business. And in a way, not really. A lot of things have stayed the same, but that's where we're at now. Specifically, I only serve women coaches because you're where my heart is. And I have become so fully ingrained in some pockets of the coaching community that the language, the way of being is all so natural to me.
Because it can be jargony. It can be like learning a new language. So that's a huge plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the jargon. I get it, so we're in the business of just really elevating women coaches. And sometimes that can be through full rebrands that speak more to their essence and who they want to reach. For some people that can be designing websites, creating marketing plans for launches of new programs. But ultimately, I feel like I am so well positioned based on the work that I've done so far in the back ends of coaches' businesses and in the goo with them of product launches and developing new services, that this is such a natural creative outlet for me and such an awesome way to partner on a higher level with the women that I get to work with. It's incredible.
Yeah, because I know things that we don't know we should know.
Exactly.
Is why you need to leverage out, and let someone as wonderful as you take the reins with that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're that's the thing I've had to learn in my business is to get support where my zones of genius end. And I think that there comes a time in every single business, coach, service provider, retail owner, it doesn't matter. There comes a point in every business where you have to get support where that cliff, when you meet that cliff, you have to get support to get to the other side.
It's a natural pivot of growth. It's
absolutely.
It's just, you can just shift your business model, but it's really just, that might be the industry word for it, but it's you got to trust. You got to trust. Yeah. What I'm coming back to where we started in this conversation and, this feeling you had about being a performer, being in the spotlight, and how it connected to music, and now where we're at now, I'm oh, you're meant to create beautiful things. Period. I feel that was true of you then, and it's true of you now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think in hindsight, gosh, that's such a good reflection. Ooh, that really gave me goosebumps. I think in hindsight, the need to perform was twofold. It was the need to create something beautiful and something creative. And it was also just the need to connect. Like I am the extrovert of all extroverts. I will just completely feel at home at a networking event. I love having conversations with people. I love putting myself out there. That feels so natural to me. So that's the other half of that, is like, I want to show up and connect with people. Like I want to show up and have cool conversations and be bubbly and be a girl's girl and connect with people and make them feel lifted up. And that's a little bit of a performance, but it's one that is inherent to who I am. And then when we get into that relationship, I want to create. That's absolutely the root of it all.
Yeah.
Thank you for reflecting that to me. That's incredible.
Yeah. I hope people who are listening hear that. Like if you've experienced a pivot, or if you're considering a pivot, like it doesn't mean you are completely abandoning the core of who you are.
No.
Right? It may just be like there is an essence to you, or a way that you show up that is so niched and specific right now that it feels like the forcing, and you actually just need to take your essence and put it in a different container. You know, like it's just finding the one that actually clicks. Yeah. So yeah, girl, that's who I see you as. You just create beautiful things.
Thank you.
Like this conversation. Thanks for who you've been in this conversation, sharing things. I know I threw some questions at you. I didn't prep you for. You're the best. Thanks for rolling with it. Where can we find you?
A few places. I am on Instagram at my business Instagram is Vine and Venture Virtual.
Okay.
I also am on TikTok, which you will see the pivot in real time, because up until now I've been making content about being a virtual assistant, and now everything changes. So that is at Jacqueline Nwankwo.
Okay.
Those are the biggest two places.
Yeah. Okay.
Our website also, which I'll make sure we share in the links, is vineandventurevirtual.com.
Yeah, we'll share all of that so people can get in your space, get in your corner, have you in their corner. I'll share. Jacqueline sends some really beautiful email newsletters, or just like check-ins or love notes. Every time I read one from you, I'm like, oh,
thank you. I just started doing it, so that is such good feedback.
It is. I'm like, every single one, I'm like, man, that was on point. Like I need whatever it is you say. I'm like, I needed that. I didn't realize I needed that. Thank you. So I get a ton of emails. I don't say that about all of them. So yeah.
I feel the same about yours. Yours have been calling me out in the most beautiful way lately. So get on Meghan's email list too, if you're watching this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Jacqueline. Gosh, what a great way to spend my afternoon. Like this was so great. I could do this all day.
I know.
For those of you that have been with us listening here, again, if there's something that resonated with you, drop it in a comment. Let's keep this conversation going. I think this is a very timely conversation for us in the world, for us as millennials, like just, where we're at in self-awareness and figuring out ourselves, and maybe being cycle breakers, and just like not finding our path perhaps, but perhaps carving our own, creating our own. For people starting businesses, for people having babies, for people wearing all of the hats and wondering how the hell they're doing it, and yet we're doing it, like, because that's what we do. Thanks for being here. Let's keep the conversation going, and stay tuned for another episode. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you. This was a blast.